Hey, everybody. We are going to be back here soon on the radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like this video, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think about anything I'm talking about here today, and share this video. I appreciate you guys watching me. You probably got football on in the background. But let's see what we got going on here. I got football up on a TV right up there. Got watching that a little bit, but we're about to come here on the radio. Hey, Bloomington Normal. Welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Why do I say beyond? Well, that's because you could be watching right now. If you're not driving, obviously, if you're not driving, you could be watching me right now in studio through Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble. Any of those, I'd love to be interacting with you guys there. You can leave me comments. I get to them during the breaks. But if you're listening on the radio, that's perfectly fine too. And if you want to interact with the show in any way, don't forget, you can comment or you could text or call in at 309-451-9299. 309-451-9299. Would be more than happy to have you involved in the show and talk to me about what we're talking about today. And we got a lot to talk about. But one of the biggest things is Nancy Pelosi is running for Congress again. She's 83, and we're going to cover that here today on Speechless with Phares. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like I just said, I am Phares, the 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois here at Cities 92.9. Also a student over at Illinois State University, graduating in December with a marketing and political science degree. And so I know a little bit about what we're talking about here today and everything under the sun. And so it was kind of a slow news week. I'll be honest with you guys. It was a little bit of a slow news week. We didn't have any indictments of the former president. We didn't have, well, there's been some things with Joe, but it seems like he's still sleepy a little bit. We might get to those. But we do have a big day today. Today is NFL Sunday kickoff, everybody. And I know some people get going crazy about NFL and their wokeness and everything, but I still love the sport. I still love watching the sport. But we'll talk a little bit about how some people were up in arms, including myself. I think it's kind of crap. But the NFL actually at the Chiefs game at the NFL opener last Thursday, they played the Black National Anthem. Now, this isn't uncommon for them. They used to have those signs in the end zone saying end racism. And you guys remember the summer of love of mostly peaceful protests? Oh, man, the NFL just went so woke then. But I still love the game. And so if you love the game, everybody, the Bears are kicking off at 3:25. You could be listening or watching on your computer, on your phone, or anything like that on your app, and still be watching on your TV at the same time of the Bears. I'm going to be keeping you updated with some scores and everything like that because it's time to bear down, Illinois. We're going to bear down this beautiful Sunday football. So good luck to anybody out there. If you put money on the games, if you're a fantasy team person, anything like that, good luck to you. Like I said, I got the games here on in the studio and I'm watching too. But I do want to give a big shout out to Paul Garcia Productions. Paul Garcia Productions out of Central Illinois sponsors this show, and he does amazing work for local businesses, creating videos and content so that people can have some of the best advertising at the local level. He does amazing work. Go check him out on YouTube, everything like that. If you want to help your business get more business, visit Paul Garcia Productions today because he does such great work. Thank you, Paul, for all of that. But let's get on into the issue at hand. Nancy Pelosi is running again. Again! Seriously. Nancy Pelosi, you know, the one who has the husband who invites gay prostitutes over and allegedly and then calls the police and claims it's a break-in. Yeah, no. We know all about Nancy. You want to know why you know all about Nancy? Because she's been in office since 1987. 1987, that's 36 years. So why is she running again? Why is she running again? Well, she'll tell you some crap, and we're going to get into that. But I'll tell you before we get into all of that, it's money. It's money and power and a lust for that power. That's really what it is. And I also want to be clear here, too. So she's 83 years old. has been working in Congress as an elected official for 36 years. Okay, my mom is in her early 60s, so like 20 years younger than Nancy Pelosi. My mom retired a little less than a decade ago when my mom was like 56, something like that. Also, or probably closer to like 57, 58. My mom also worked for 35 years. So the same amount of time Nancy Pelosi has been in Congress, my mom worked as a teacher and is now retired. Why are people like Nancy not retiring? Why? Again, it's got to be the lust for the power. The average age of an American to retire is 61, according to a 2022 Gallup poll. 61 is the average age of a retired American. So why do we have these politicians, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden? The list goes on of old farts that are just cashing in. And they just keep getting elected and elected and elected. You want to know why? Because they have the money. And no one's going to challenge them because they're on their pedestal. But anyways, Nancy says she's gonna run again. Out of the Daily Mail, Nancy Pelosi, 83, confirms she is running again. The former Democrat speaker revealed she wants 2 more years in Congress and to help San Francisco's recovery. This is hilarious, guys. Just listen. So she posts to Twitter. I'm sorry, X, the platform formerly known as Twitter. You know, like Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince. Anyways, she posts to Twitter. Now more than ever, our city needs us to advance San Francisco's values and further our recovery. Our country needs America to show the world that our flag is still there with liberty and justice for all. That is why I'm running for re-election and respectfully ask for your vote. Yeah, that's what Nancy says. That's why she's running for re-election, is because now more than ever, their city needs us to advance San Francisco Valley. You've been in office for 36 years. Shouldn't by that point you have done everything for San Francisco? Why is San Francisco? Look, I know it seems kind of diluted to ask why is San Francisco not perfect, but what are you going to do now that is going to be so much more helpful that you weren't able to do in the last 36 years of your representation, Nancy? What are you going to do now? Interestingly enough, San Francisco is experiencing a major crime wave, including smash and grab robberies and carjackings. In August, the San Francisco Police Department said that the city had nearly 1,600 car break-ins over 30 days. And there have been nearly 10,000 thefts from vehicles in the city so far this year. My God. So 1,600 car break-ins in over 30 days. That's like at least, I can't do the math. I'm sorry. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a marketing major, but I'll get back to you on that one. Somebody in the comments, do the math. 1,600 car break-ins in over 30 days. In my head, I'm thinking, what, like 20 a day then, at least? Something like that. This is insane. San Francisco is a crime-ridden city, but don't worry, everybody. Nancy's got a plan. Nancy's got a plan. She's going to be there for it. You want to know what Nancy said? This is out of the New York Post. Nancy Pelosi said she plans on cracking down on crime in San Francisco when she's launching her re-election. She says, quote, there will be arrests, and that's the way it is. Oh, my gosh. All of a sudden, Nancy is changing her tune. Remember? Nobody's a criminal in 2020 to Nancy. She wore the African garb on the floors of Congress, of the Capitol. And she was BLM all the way. Peaceful protests that aren't really that peaceful. That's what she was all about then. But now she says our city right now needs an anti-crime crusader. Yes, the Democratic icon is rebranding herself in that way. Friday afternoon, in an interview with MSNBC host Nicole Wallace, she tried to justify her bid for another 2-year term, saying, the needs that our city has right now call for me to stay another term. Once again, I ask, what needs does the city have that you couldn't solve in the last 36 years? But I digress. She said, quote, I have agreed to stay on another term in order to help meet the needs that we have now. We're a resilient city, she said. We have AIDS. We have earthquakes. Of course, we've all had the pandemic. We intend to come out of this resilient city that we are even better. we do have isolated situations in downtown San Francisco. See, that's what it is. That's what I think is hilarious. Okay. So Nancy is calling this crime wave in San Francisco. Again, 1,600 carjackings in the last 30 days. I'm sorry, car break-ins in the last 30 days. But it's just isolated incidents. They always try to come at conservatives, Democrats do. They always try to come at conservatives and say, when conservatives are like, man, there are some bad cops out there, but the vast majority of cops are good. They try to say, it's not just isolated incidents. All cops are B words. That's what the Democrats do. Oh, but when there's a crime wave and you're averaging several carjackings a day, no, it's just an isolated situation in downtown San Francisco, in the Tenderloin district, according to Pelosi. We have just said to people there, what is she saying here? We have just said to the people there and the rest who are very much concerned about it, that if there is crime and there is violence and there are drugs, there will be arrests, and that's the way it is. Well, I like the change of tone, Nancy, but you've enabled the criminal behavior for so long by destroying the public perception of the police, by not standing behind the good cops, by demonizing the cops, calling them racists. Nancy, the crime is there because of you. You have represented this district for 36 years. And yet now, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's as if the crime just fell into her lap right then and there, as if she just got dropped into the role of Congress yesterday and now has to solve the issue of crime, as if it hasn't been there and it hasn't been something that she's been consistently deteriorating for quite a while. Now, this kind of talk about old people in Congress and just honestly idiocy from the honestly, how stupid do they think we are? That's the other question. How stupid do these representatives think we are? Mitch, you're freezing up every other week. We know there's something going on. We're not dumb. Dianne Feinstein, we saw it's public record that your daughter has taken over power of attorney for you. And we saw on C-SPAN when somebody whispered in your ear to just vote yes on a several $1 million spending package. We see these things. We're not dumb. And yet they keep running and running and running. But the fact of the matter is while I say we aren't dumb, some of us are. Look, so a lot of people want to come, when we talk about all these old politicians, these old farts, been in office for so dang long, and people are like, well, we need term limits. We need term limits. And I've talked about this on the show before, and I always got to reiterate a few things about it, because I think I'm actually in the minority opinion on this one. And if you disagree with me, don't forget to text or call in at 309-451-9299. Let's hash it out. 309-451-9299. We can talk about this. Term limits, right? So there's two things about term limits. There's why we shouldn't have term limits, and then also why we can't have term limits. But I'm going to start off with why we shouldn't. No, we should not have term limits. First off, because the framers didn't put it into the Constitution for a reason. I firmly believe that. Now, what that reason is highly debated, but I believe that reason is because, my part two, that we should be smart enough and good enough at informing the public and having an informed public to actually be able to vote these people out of office. We don't need to. You want to know what our term limit could be? Hey, if you're doing a good job, we're going to keep you in. If you're doing crap and you're obviously sponging off the taxpayer and just cashing in and pandering, then we're going to vote you out. That's what we should be doing. That's what we should be doing. That's why we shouldn't have term limits. And again, the other thing about not having term limits is kind of a tertiary point, is if you do have somebody that served, look, I can't tell you a single politician that's been in office for 30 plus years right now that's currently serving that I think is doing an amazing job. There could be one. There's 535 members of both the House and the Senate combined. So there could be one that I just don't know of. But the people that have been in office, like Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Mitch McConnell, and more, I can't tell you a single one of them that are doing a good job. But on the off chance that at some point we do get somebody that serves for 30 plus years that actually does an amazing job, why would we want to term limit that? Like, what if we actually have somebody? And I know that's a hypothetical, and you could be sitting out there saying, Kev, you're living in fantasy land. If you think a career politician, somebody who's been in office that long, could actually be representing the people. And I might be living in fantasy land. Look, I live in Illinois. Illinois is the land of fantasy. That's J.B. Pritzker's made it that. So let me live in my fantasy land for a second. I believe there could be at some point somebody who could serve for 20 to 30 years and actually do a good job. Once in a blue moon, less than a blue moon, but it could happen. It could happen. So those are the reasons why we should not have term limits. We could have a good representative. Also, we should be smart enough to vote people out on our own. But here's the biggest thing. There's no point in I guess that 2.5-minute rant about why we shouldn't have term limits could probably be null and void because there's a simple reason as to why we can't have term limits. Why can't we? Because that would require these dinosaurs in office to vote themselves out. Because the only way you'd be able to have term limits, the only way we got term limits for the presidency was through a constitutional amendment. So it's through a constitutional amendment. And so that means that we would have to go through both our House and our Senate, or even just a bill. It would still have to go through our House and our Senate. But you know what I mean? Is that they would have to vote themselves out. And it's not going to happen. These dinosaurs will not do it. Look, there's some good enough people. I know Ted Cruz introduced a term limits bill a few years ago that would have voted himself out, and good for him. But try convincing the other 534 members of Congress that they shouldn't be there anymore. And it's not all of them. Some of them are freshmen and everything. And before we end, we're coming to the end of this segment, but I want to be clear too. When I say why that's not going to happen, why we're not going to have people vote themselves out. So the average length of service for representatives at the beginning of the 118th Congress, the current Congress, was 8.5 years, 4.3 House terms. The majority of term limits proposals I see offer 4 terms. 4 terms and you're out, which means the majority of them, the average, would have to vote themselves out. And for senators, the average length of service currently is 11.2 years, which is just under 2 Senate terms. And all the proposals I see oftentimes say 4 for the House, 4 terms for the House, 2 terms for the Senate, and that's when we kick them out. So that would mean all these people either be voting themselves immediately or voting themselves out for the next term. The majority of them. That's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm just being realistic with you, everybody. But don't forget, you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. Talk to me about it. Let's have a debate about term limits. Am I wrong? I could always be wrong. But we got to take a break here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We'll be right back. Okie dokie, everybody. If you can't tell, I'm just getting over like a little bit of a cold. So I'm trying my best. I got a lot of water. I'm actually going to go grab another bottle real quick to get myself through this. But I love you guys. I need to get through this stuff, though, because it's important. It's important to talk about that stuff. I'll be right back. Waters. It's what keeps me alive. Wada, wada, wada. And a little donut here, too. This is great. This is Raider Family Farms, everybody. I think they might sponsor some stuff with the station. But Raider Family Farms, we got some donuts from them in the station. And I was just so hungry today. And I know I've been on my my diet a little bit. But I was hungry. This is my main thing that I've eaten all day. So, an amazing donut from Raider Family Farms, everybody. Eating it right here in studio. And let's see who we got in the chat before we come back here. Oklahoma Chicken Cam, you're the best. License, good to see you. Andrea, thank you for joining. And keep the chat going, guys. I feed off what you guys say in the chat too, and the energy I see. So keep the chat going. Make this a conversation. Don't make this one way. It's not just about me. DVR the games, man. Like I said, I got it right up there. The Bears are kicking off like right now. We're gonna be back here sometime soon. You can have the games on, like I said, if you got two screens, man, you can have the games on one and then me on another. Let's go to my guide here, see if I can get. I'm coming back in like 10 seconds. Maybe I'm gonna have to find the Bears game after this. Nope, I'm doing it right here. All right, I guess it's not gonna happen. I got to get back on the air here, everybody. And we are back here with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm your host, Kev Phares, everybody, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, attendee of Illinois State University. And I know a lot of people are like, you're just a college kid. What do you know? Well, I am just a college kid, but I've seen a lot in my life. I've been working as a conservative activist since I was 16. I helped get multiple Republican candidates elected from in my home area near Chicago. And then even since, I've helped with people getting elected down here in Central Illinois. And I've been able to bring a voice to a lot of different candidates. Just like 2 weeks ago, I had Ross Webb announce his candidacy for county board on my show. Love Ross, great guy. But we also got a lot of fun things going on this Sunday, everybody. The Bears are about to kick off today, probably about 2 minutes ago. You might be watching that right now. And if you are, and you're also listening to my show, I appreciate it. God bless you guys. We got a little bit of a shorter segment here, but we got a big day tomorrow. And so here's the thing. Is I usually get really angry on this show, and there's a lot of things to be angry about, in terms of what's going on in the world right now. But we got a day tomorrow that I want to take a moment to be a little bit more somber on. Tomorrow, for anybody, if you haven't been paying attention to your calendar, tomorrow is 9/11. 9/11, some of the worst attacks on domestic soil. I believe it's probably, I think, the deadliest attacks ever to happen on the continental United States. I don't know how many died in Pearl Harbor, but somebody can fact check me on that. Nevertheless, it's a really somber occasion, and I still pray for all the victims and their families and the people that even died afterwards, the first responders that rushed in to an unknown situation, putting their own safety behind that of tons of others. It's never forget is an understatement. Never forget is an understatement. And so for everybody out there, if you know anybody that had any relation to the 9/11 attacks, in terms of maybe they were on a flight that day, where were you? That's always the question, because I was less than a year old. And so that's the way that we keep these stories going. So I'm going to keep the phone lines open for the next several segments. And yeah, I'm going to get into some other stories, and we're going to talk about some other things. But at all times, feel free to interrupt me. And I'll make an announcement at the beginning of the next segment as well. Where were you on 9/11? What was your experience? 309-451-9299. I want to know what you have to say, because I can only learn. Here's the thing, is I firmly believe that the best people to learn from are those that have experienced more than I have. And I'm only a 22-year-old conservative college kid. I've experienced some, but I know many out there listening have experienced a heck of a lot more than I have. And so, once again, a prayer for those who lost their lives, rushed into the call of duty on 9/11. Thank you to all of them. And if you have a story, where were you in our firm belief that we should never forget? Where were you on 9/11? 309-451-9299, or leave it in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, anything like that. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Never forget, everybody. Let's talk about it. Some other stories coming up, like what does Biden plan to do on 9/11? Where does he plan to be? Hint, It's not New York. It's not even DC. We'll get into that. I'm getting a call right now. I'm going to pick that up over the break. But everybody, God bless you. God bless America. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. And I'm going to take this call. Hey, this is Kev. We're off the air right now. May I ask who's calling? Really? I got you. I got you. Hmm. Oh my gosh. Well, would you mind if I put you on hold? We're going to be back on the air in 2 to 3 minutes, and I'd love for you to tell your story on the air if that's okay, and we can keep it obviously anonymous. Would that be okay? Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Very interesting. I'll use that story in my next segment. I really appreciate the call, sir. All right. Bye bye. That was a very interesting story. We're going to cover that in the next segment. I got to take a note of kind of what he said. Okay, let's see what we got for these comments. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting all these fantasy updates for my fantasy team. For football, everybody, it's NFL Sunday football. All right, let's see what we got here. Ryan McKenzie once again showing that he has bad opinions in supporting the Packers. Um, Congratulations, Ryan. You're a loser. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love you, buddy. I love you. You know but this was a bad take. Boo Packers. Let me see. I got to get the Bears game up here. There we go. It's on a commercial right now. Let's see what else we got going on here in the chat. Yeah, I think the best term limits would be those set by the voters. However, we have voters that still that go based off of which name do I know the most. Well, I've heard Mitch McConnell, I've heard this one, I've heard that one. So yeah, people could do better. Absolutely. These everlasting politicians are like the monsters in horror movies. They just keep coming back over and over. Not that I want to insult any monsters by comparing them to someone. That's funny. That's funny. Andrea, you're always welcome to call and give me the business. I have a story to tell at least at the beginning of this next one because that last call I just got was amazing. Ryan was in his 8th grade homeroom. I can still remember exactly where and what we were doing that day, even in junior high. Yeah. My mom's told me stories. Because my sisters were being babysat. My mom was a teacher. I was being babysat by somebody. My sisters were being babysat by a different babysitter because that babysitter was like gonna take my sisters to school. Um, and it was like somebody's uh one of my sister's friends' moms or something. And the mom didn't want to take my sisters to school. And my mom had to leave her school to go take my sisters to school because we lived in Plainfield, Illinois at the time. If anybody knows Plainfield. My mom was like, this is all scary and it's all weird, but my daughters need to be in school. Like my mom was not worried about a potential attack at a Plainfield elementary school at that time. People reached out to you about your lawsuit. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. We can do a follow-up on that. Let me cover a little bit more. Maybe in the second hour, Andrea. You could stick around for the second hour. That might be a good time for it. She is old and evil. I assume we're talking about Nancy. We're about to be back here in about 10 seconds, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Hey, and welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm your host, Kev Ferris, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in today on this beautiful Sunday, NFL Sunday. The Bears just kicked off. I believe the game is no score right now. I'm going to keep it up here on my computer. Yeah, Packers got the ball. 10 minutes left in the first quarter. I don't know about you guys. I try not to do like harsh endorsements on this show of anybody. But one thing I will say is bear down, Illinois, bear down. I'm not a Packer fan here. God, no. Let's go Bears, everybody. Okay, well, we got some stories we're covering here in the last, and I know I got a text here from Butch Exton about something. Butch, if you're listening, I'll get you in the next segment. I got to find it on my phone. But thank you for the text. Butch Exton does amazing work locally with veterans. And I'm sure that he has some event that he wants me to shout out, and I will do that. But speaking of just, so in the last segment, I talked a little bit about 9/11. Obviously, tomorrow is September 11th. It is the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. For a little bit of perspective on that, 9/11 happened when I was 9 months old. I was born on Christmas Eve of 2000. 9/11 happened 9 months later, just about. And so I don't really know how the country truly felt. I mean, I didn't become like I was obviously a human being. I was a born baby, but like I don't remember anything until like 2003, 2004. And so I'm trying to learn, right? And I've heard stories. I've heard stories from my mom. I've heard stories from teachers growing up, everything like that. But I want to know your guys' stories about what America was like, what you were going through. Where were you on the day we should never forget, September 11th? Don't forget, you can text or call in at 309-451-9299 and let me know. Or you can put it in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, and I'll check it out there. And we'll see. And I'll share it. I'll share your story if you got one. And I'd love to know what you have to say. But I got an interesting phone call in the last break from a guy who wanted to tell me about his 9/11 experience. And I thought this one was very interesting, and it is unique and also echoes a sentiment that I've heard a lot about the immediately after post 9/11 world. Um, and so he didn't give me his name. He wanted to remain anonymous, which is perfectly fine. But he was a prison guard at the time. And that might not be the exact term, but that's what I remembered. He was a prison guard on 9/11. And one of the inmates who had like the TV on or something called everybody and said, you guys got to see this. What's going on here? And they watched the attacks in the prison. Guards and inmates alike watched it together. Now, I think that's incredibly profound because what he told me is that at that moment, it was not about the power dynamic of prisoner or guard, criminal or officer. It wasn't anything like that. They were Americans. They were confused. I'm sure a little bit scared. Had no idea what was going on. And at that moment, they were just Americans. I think it's important to remember stories like that, in which the power dynamic that in everyday life oftentimes consumes us much more than, or so much so that it blinds us to what actually is going on in our lives, or like actually it blinds us from being able to see the stark reality of the world. We need to remind ourselves in these times of division of what we really are. What are we? Are we playing out the role in our lives And obviously, there's a need for a prison guard and an inmate. Or, well, no, there's not necessarily a need for an inmate, but because of inmates, there's a need for prison guards. There's a need for a sense of a power dynamic and everything like that. But we need to remember who we are. We're Americans. So no matter how divided we get, no matter how angry we can get with each other, and trust me, if you listen to the show, you know I can get quite angry a lot. We are Americans, and we need to put Americans first. And I know there are people out there that are not doing so. And it's okay to be angry at them. But be angry at the person themselves. Just because, while I'm not necessarily happy that anybody voted for Joe Biden is the one committing the actions. We can't hate our neighbor. It'd be such a sad life. But I am pretty fed up with Joe Biden, and I'll tell you that. You want to know why? Because tomorrow is 9/11, like I said, talking about it a little bit. It's the 22nd anniversary of it. Obviously, nearly 3,000 human beings were murdered on the spot, in New York. And more die days after from toxic fumes, your first responders that rushed into the call of action. And where is President Biden spending his day? Like I said, it's not New York, D.C., Shanksville, not the Pentagon, nothing like that. No, our 80-year-old president and First Lady Jill Biden will be in Alaska. Yes, Biden was in India over the weekend for the G20 conference, but he couldn't arrange his schedule to make it back for a 9/11 ceremony. Instead, he's doing a flyby on the most remotest part of the U.S. soil. This is out of the New York Post. It may have been 22 years, but New Yorkers remember. Yeah. So our president, when basically the American slogan of that horrible day is never forget. Who seems to be forgetting? Well, Joe Biden can't even really remember where he is half the time, so no wonder he's forgetting the worst attacks on domestic U.S. soil against Americans. Of course he is. Insane. I will tell you, though, Florida governor and presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis, 44, does plan on visiting the city Monday at the invitation of angry families who lost loved ones on that dark morning. DeSantis had the intelligence and heart to pay attention to the 7 families who invited him to Ground Zero. Families felt a little bit slighted by former President Trump, as he will not be attending. But again, Joe Biden, our current president, is ignoring the day we should never forget. Period. DeSantis will be there, though. Speaking of Joe Biden, there was an interesting news story. This is a total 180. Like I said earlier in the show, it has been a slow news week, going back and forth on a lot of different stories. But Vice President Kamala Harris made headlines this week when she had an interview where she said she might have to take over. Yes, she might have to take over, which is something we kind of all knew. But while a lot has made headlines about this, but the one thing that I find interesting is a lot of people were not talking about what was going on in the rest of the interview and the absolute lies that Kamala spread. Yeah, absolute liar. We're going to take a look here. I'm going to share. If you're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, anything like that, you're going to be able to see the screen. If you're on the radio, don't worry. You're going to be able to listen to the interview. But we're going to break down a little bit of what Kamala said and just the lies she told, along with her saying that she might have to take over for Joe Biden. Take a listen here.
Voters in the upcoming election is President Biden's age. An AP poll recently showed that 77% of Americans and 69% of Democrats believe he's too old for a second term.
It's not just them. I also believe he's too old for a second term.
Do you think he's ready to serve as president until he's 86? And somebody
Nope.
He works with them. Have you seen changes in recent years?
First of all, let me say that our president has been an extraordinary leader.
Lies.
Who has accomplished things that previous presidents hoped and dreamed and promised they would do and did not achieve.
Like some of the worst approval ratings of any president in history, or the highest inflation pretty much since like the Great Depression. Being able to lie to the American public swiftly and without the media actually calling you out on it. Yeah, pretty amazing feats, Joe.
You remember that whole thing about Infrastructure Week?
Oh.
Joe Biden, under his leadership and because of his leadership, passed the most substantial infrastructure law in recent American history, which is transformative in terms of what it is currently in the process of doing to build back up America's infrastructure, whether it be roads and bridges or ensuring that all families have access to affordable high-speed internet, to what we must do to make sure that people have the ability to just get where they need to go, and we will create the jobs in the process. We have created, under Joe Biden's leadership, over 800,000 manufacturing.
All right, she went through a lot there, and I got to break something down because she's just lying right now to you. I'll tell you. So first thing is, so this infrastructure bill. Let's go back. Let's take our time machine back to when they actually passed this 1.85 trillion quote Build Back Better bill. That's what she's referring to when she talks about infrastructure. And what does this actually do? Yes, it did have a little bit to do with roads, bridges, and like actual infrastructure. But it also did things like lower the cost of prescription drug prices, reduce out-of-pocket copays. Okay, here's an interesting one, too. It also established a $35 out-of-pocket maximum for insulin. Okay, so a lot of stuff that has to do with healthcare. There's also things like universal preschool for 3 to 4-year-olds, a 1-year extension of expanded child tax credit, expand utility and clean energy tax credits, so much. A lot of stuff with Medicare, Medicaid, and a few other things with senior home assistance and childcare. Things that actually don't actually have to do with healthcare. I'm sorry, with infrastructure. They do have to do with healthcare, but they don't have directly to do with infrastructure. So what that bill really was a pork barrel of a lot of crap that did not have to do with infrastructure, but they put it in as infrastructure because they knew they wouldn't be able to pass a lot of it if they didn't hold the gun to Republicans' heads saying, you're going to look like an awful person if you don't say you want to repair roads and bridges and also do a lot of this socialist crap. Some of it actually was kind of good, though, and it really makes me mad because people don't realize this. So one of the things that infrastructure bill did, like I said earlier, was establish a $35 out-of-pocket maximum for insulin. This was something Trump had actually done. Trump did this. It did not have to be in this bill. Well, it did, but it didn't have to be. Because the only reason why they had to put it back in this bill is because on day one of Biden's presidency, just like he promised, he repealed that. And it was good policy to lower the cost of a life-saving drug that currently gets price gouged by the people that hold the patent for it. But Biden repealed it. Everybody started complaining because insulin prices skyrocketed. And so then he had to put it back in there. But nobody wants to give Trump the credit when he actually deserves it because he did that. But anyways, Kamala then also goes on to say, let's listen. We only have about a minute left here in this segment, but listen to what the next thing she has to say, the next lie in this interview. Let me pull it back up on screen here for everybody as well. Okay, listen up.
Created under Joe Biden's leadership, over 800,000 manufacturing jobs right here in the United States. We have created 13 million new jobs under Joe Biden's leadership.
Okay, so that's actually a lie as well. This is from the House Budget Committee. She claims that they've created 13 million new jobs, when in reality, like I said, from the House Budget Committee, they said nearly 72% of all job gains since 2021 were simply jobs that were being recovered from the pandemic. So it's not job creation, it's job restoration. And it was not due to any type of hard work or bringing manufacturing or anything like that to America. It's job restoration, not creation. In fact, when looking at today's economy compared to pre-pandemic levels, employment is only up by about 3.7 million. Prior to the pandemic, job creation under President Trump was 6.7 million. So 3 million more, double, basically, just about double, just under double. What is she saying? We got more to that interview. We're going to cover it in the next segment. Like I said, she says she's got to take over for Joe Biden. Yeah, Kamala says that. And like I said earlier, the phone lines are consistently open. If you want to talk about this, or if you have a story about 9/11, obviously tomorrow is 9/11. I don't know everything about 9/11. I was 9 months old when it happened. And so if you'd like to share a story, we will pause whatever I'm talking about to hear what you have to say. 309-451-9299. I want to hear that. 309-451-9299 is that number. Text or call in, everybody. I'd love to hear from you. Butch Exton, I know you're probably listening. I'll get to your announcement in the next segment. Everybody stay tuned for more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Oh, I'm losing my voice, everybody. Like I said, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. But I'm doing okay, and I'm here, and I'm still fired up, and I appreciate each and every one of you watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and let's keep the chat going, everybody. I want to know what else you guys got to say. Let's hear it. I also need to check my Rumble. I see on Rumble, Groove 105 said he was walking his dog on 9/11. People were running out of their houses telling him. I know. Where were you? Where were you? What else is going on, everybody? I see Andrea said, then they sent us home and closed the company for 3 days. I worked at a company, sold bone china. They called us in the cafeteria and watched it on TV. Gotcha. Then they sent you home for 3 days. Wow. Oklahoma Chicken Cam was working at a power plant on 9/11. I shut down internet access for the plant. They helped move the utility trucks outside of the plant perimeter to maximize surveillability in event of attack. Interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. Yep. I think I oftentimes hear people say when people are discouraged by the level of divisiveness we have in our society right now, I oftentimes hear people say things like, I want to go back to the day after 9/11. Obviously, not the attacks, not the hatefulness, nothing like that, but going to a time when it seemed like nothing else mattered. We were all Americans and we could be there for each other as Americans. I was going to say, shut that one. Yep. It's an interesting dynamic, everything that we've gone through since then, and how little people remember. How little people seek to remember as well. I know I'm fighting against, oh my God, the Packers scored a touchdown. Boo. Boo, Packers. I see you, Raj. Our dental equipment company here in Oregon sent a team to do an install in NYC. They toured the World Trade Center the day before 9/11. That's insane. That's insane. It really is. Flag on the play for the Bears game. Absolutely. People should remember that, Andrea. I'll be back here in 10 seconds. Okay. Let's come back. And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. God bless you guys. If you want to be interacting with the show in another way, not just on the radio or on your app, you could also be watching me right now on Facebook Live on Cities 92.9 Facebook, or Look up Speechless with Kev on YouTube. Be like the first thing that comes up. All you got to do is like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'd really appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. You can always interact with me through there, or you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. I always want to hear from you guys. 309-451-9299. In fact, I got a texter earlier, consistent texter, Butch Exton, who does a lot of work with the American Legion. And he said tomorrow, 9/11, at 10 a.m., at Miller Park at the Firemen's Memorial, they will be doing an American Legion and Firemen's Memorial. And then there's also a second ceremony on September 15th, Friday, at the McLean County Museum of History, which is the old courthouse building. This is for POW and MIA Day at 11 a.m. Again, tomorrow at 10, 9/11, Miller Park for the Firemen's Memorial. And then on September 15th, on Friday, at the McLean County Museum of History, the old courthouse building, POW and MIA Day at 11 a.m. Thank you, Butch, for always keeping us updated on that. And if you guys want to share your stories about where you were on 9/11 or anything like that, don't forget, you can always text or call in, interrupt the show, whatever I'm talking about. 309-451-9299. I'd be more than happy to take your call, listen to your story, and make sure that we never forget. Because we know Joe Biden's forgetting because he forgets a lot of things. And he's also going to Alaska instead of New York tomorrow. So, but speaking of the presidency, the vice presidency, all of that stuff with the executive branch, I was covering this interview in the last segment that Kamala Harris did, in which she says she might have to take over for Joe. And she says a lot of lies in it. I'll tell you, she says a lot of lies. I still got this interview pulled up. Let's listen to the rest of it for part of this segment.
So yes, I see him every day. A substantial amount of time we spend together is in the Oval Office, where I see how his ability to understand issues and weave through complex issues in a way that no one else can to make smart and important decisions on behalf of the American people have played out. And so I will say to you that I think the American people ultimately want to know that their president delivers and Joe Biden delivers.
Joe Biden delivers. I'll tell you, I wouldn't trust Joe Biden to deliver me a Domino's pizza, much less a good economy or anything like that. All right, now listen to when she's asked about what will happen if Joe can't fulfill his duties.
President's age often go hand in hand with questions about how you would step in the role, if necessary. Do you feel prepared for that possibility? And serving as vice president prepared you for that job?
Yes.
And how would you?
Yes. That's how Kamala always is, right? It's like a kindergartner with her answers.
You describe that process.
Well, first of all, I'm answering your hypothetical, but Joe Biden's going to be fine. So
she seems really sure about that, and it makes me think like if we're going to do a weekend at Biden's for the 2024 election, like they're just going to be like propping him up on a stick.
That is not going to come to fruition. But let us also understand that every vice president understands that when they take the oath, that they must be very clear about the responsibility they may have to take over the job of being president. I am no different.
Yeah, a lot of conservatives were going crazy saying, oh my gosh, she said she's got to be ready. And she does. But I think she doesn't even realize that like a lot of Americans are like, yeah, no, we don't, like, we wouldn't be surprised if, it'd be sad. Any loss of life is sad. I'm not saying I want it to happen, but a lot of people would be like, yeah, if Joe Biden croaked tomorrow, I really wouldn't be surprised by it. That guy seems like he's on his last leg. We know he's on his last brain cell. Well, everybody, we got to take a break here on Cities 92.9. I am still on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, interacting with you guys during the break. Don't forget, you can always text or call in at 309-451-9299. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. How are we doing, everybody out there? I see we got some fun viewers on Rumble. Thank you guys there. Don't forget to go to my YouTube at some point. I'm getting a call. So let me take this real quick. See who it is. Hey, who am I talking to? This is Cav for Speechless. Becky, how's it going? Yeah? Yeah, I know that. Why does she want to be called Doctor, Becky? Oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate the joke. I needed the laugh. Thank you, Becky. Bye-bye. Have a good one. Becky says to everybody. So Becky, if you guys know, you might know Becky. She called into Ty Smith's show last week and said that she had no idea that Obama was black because she was blind. Like genuinely, go watch it it's on Ty's channel. Quite a good video, and I appreciate you listening and watching, Becky. But she says that Jill Biden wants to be called a doctor because she went to school to learn how to change Joe's Depends. And I liked it. I thought it was funny. It was a good laugh. Agreed, Laura. I get another call. Becky, if this is you again, I love you, hon, but like, let's see who this is. City's 92.9. This is Kev. How can I help you? Andrea, how's it going? Of course, you always call in. You wanna come on in the next segment? Yeah, I'd love for you. You got an update on your lawsuit? Do you have anything to say about like term limits or anything like that too? Okay. Okay. I'd love to hear it. All right. I'm gonna put you on hold. We'll be back probably 4 to 5 minutes ish. Awesome. Sounds good. There we go. We got our good friend Andrea calling in. She's going to give us an update on her lawsuit, I believe, regarding masks and everything. I'm going to have her, Andrea, you're probably listening right now there. I'm going to have you kind of outline that lawsuit for anybody who did not hear it last week. So I'm going to have you do that and then fill in on that. And we could talk about just about anything. I got some more stories planned. Um, like another Kamala Harris one, because she's hilarious. She is hilarious. Just going through. I got a lot to cover or just to follow with football right now. Who are you guys rooting for? Any games you guys watched today? Put it in the comments. Let me know. All hail the fellowship. What's going on, Raven? What games are you guys watching, listening to, anything like that? You guys football people? I love football. I love football. I've played for a little bit. I'm a little guy. Okay, so I'm 5'7" and like 165 pounds right now. And so, and like this is like me full grown adult. So just about like, I mean, I might grow an inch or two, whatever. But this is almost at the end. And so I could never, like, I was always a little guy. And so I couldn't really play much. But when I was in middle school, we could play football and they divided us into weight classes. So like I played in the light weights. And I weighed in at a whopping, I was like maybe 5 foot at best. And I weighed in at like a whopping 100 pounds. It's probably like 4'11" at that point, honestly. But yeah, so I was like in seventh grade, 4'11", 5 foot, 100 pounds. I was the heaviest kid in my lightweight league. And I was the center. So like I was the one that was snapping the ball for anybody who, like, I was right there. I was snapped the ball to the quarterback. And I took kids down. I felt like a giant. I felt like I was like, like I was a big guy. I felt like it, but I was 4'11" and 100 pounds. I miss those days. Because now I go out and I go into like civil society and I see, like, I'll be at like the bar or like just even going to class and like I work out. I try to stay in decent shape. Yeah, I got my donut. I've been nursing here for like an hour, but you know what I mean. As I work out, I try to stay in decent enough shape. And I'll see these guys, and they'll be like the football players. They'll be like track stars. They'll be swimmers, whatever, for ISU for my college. and they're like 6'5" and like probably like nearing 300 pounds, but like they don't look like they're near it. Well, they look like they're nearing 300 pounds, but they don't look like wide bodies or anything like that. They're just like big, like it's just fills their. It's insane to me. How big? What kind of milk did they have to drink to get that big? And why don't I have it? I don't know. Here's my rant about being a small guy for today. I don't even know how I got into that topic, but we'll be back here soon enough. Hey, Bloomington Normal. Welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. You want to know why I say beyond? I say beyond because you could be watching right now. If you're not driving, I don't want to encourage any bad behavior, but if you're not driving right now, you could be watching on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble. And heck, you could have the football game on one screen on mute and be listening and watching the speeches at the same time. It's a great idea, honestly. I got the Bears game on right now. It's on commercial, but the Bears are down right now. And if you're out there and you're listening and you're a Packers fan, you can turn it off real quick. No, I'm just kidding. But good for you if you're a Packers fan because they are winning right now. But the Bears, I'm still rooting for my Bears, my hometown Bears. I love them. But we got a lot to talk about here more on Speechless today, other than just football, because the world, as always, is going, in some ways, to heck in a handbasket. And we are here to at least let you know that you're not alone in your feelings in that. In some of the things that are consistently running through this show, one of which being, if you have a story, tomorrow is 9/11. And as Butch Exton texted me, Butch Exton being a member of the American Legion, the American Legion and Firemen's Memorial will be having a memorial tomorrow at Miller Park for 9/11 at 10 a.m. Feel free to go with that. And so if you have a call or anything that you'd like to say regarding 9/11, where you were, what your feelings on it, what happened, what did the day after 9/11 feel like to you? 9/12, what was that like? Anything like that, text or call in at 309-451-9299. I'd love to hear what you have to say. I did get a caller during the break, and she's a consistent caller on this show. Last week, she called in telling me about a lawsuit when it comes to what she had what she had done during COVID times. And we're gonna follow up with her on that, see what else she's got to say. Andrea, you're on. How's it going?
Hey, Kev, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. So lay out this lawsuit last week for the show, the Do Not Comply show. You talked to me about this lawsuit you were involved in. Briefly lay that out and then give us the update. What's going on with it?
Okay, so what happened was I was accosted in a grocery store. Like my rights were violated because I didn't have a mask on. So a cashier refused to ring me through. She called the manager. It got heated. I called the sheriff, and that's a key point, to file a report, which I did. Then I went home and I thought to myself, how do you bring this down? Like, how do you bring the tower down? So what I did was I sued the store manager and the cashier personally.
Yeah.
And this is this is where I'm going to sound kind of like a psychopath and a little bit vicious, but this is how you got to do it.
Now you gotta be a little cutthroat to go through with that kind of stuff. I get it.
Well, so when I found an attorney that would take the case, I said to him, listen, I don't want to sue the store. I want to sue these people personally. And I did it for two reasons, Kev. The first reason was because stores have very expensive attorneys that, they can just run the court fees up and the lawyer fees up, and most people just settle out of court.
Yep.
So that's why I didn't do it. But one of the things that I did do is when I decided to go through with the lawsuit, I had these two people served at work. So all their coworkers saw it. So
So
What I
you
did
sent
was,
a message. You sent a message to these people.
well, yeah, what I did was I caused a wedge to be driven in between the employees' loyalty to the company
Hmm.
and their own personal finances.
Yeah.
And when we went to mediation, the company did have the corporate management come in, right? Because as you can imagine, that caused a substantial amount of backlash at work.
Yeah.
Right? Once people realized, oh my God, I could get sued for this, which was my full and complete intention, was to actually make people so afraid that they would lose everything that they would not enforce it, which is exactly what happened.
Good.
So I did do a very substantial amount of damage, both to the store manager and to the cashier. Like when we went to mediation, I had my attorney call their lawyers because, the store wasn't covering their lawyers. They had to pay out of pocket.
Hmm.
And I demanded a list of all their assets, all of them, retirement funds, everything.
Mm.
And, it was just that's what you have to do. You have to use the leverage that you do have. So we did settle. I did, I got my money. And with the rumblings of the buffoonery seemingly about to happen, I called that attorney. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to set up a trust with a group of attorneys and use the money that I took from these women so that other people who are going to have their rights violated or potentially have their rights violated will be able to sue in the same exact playbook that I did. Like, I'm going to get attorneys who will do this, and I would be more than happy to, be guiding people on how to do this.
That's amazing. And always, of course, keep me updated on when you could potentially start that kind of fund, because I'm sure that we could have listeners on this station, on my YouTube, everything like that, that have potentially, if not already, could in the future have their rights violated in some way comparable. So thank you so much for that, Andrea.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, when you're working at a company, the company is going to have very high-powered lawyers. But if you decide that you're going to sue your boss personally, when you take it to them personally and make them realize, if you do this, I'm going to come after everything that you have and I'm going to bankrupt you.
Yeah.
That drives a very big wedge in their loyalty with the company. Like, they'll trample on your rights all day long if they're, if they think you're just going to sue the company. But when they know that they're about to lose their house and their retirement and their savings and their investment and their cars and their jewelry, then the sun's minds start to get changed, and they get changed real quickly. And that's the wedge that you have to drive. And, if we can get this rocking and rolling, I'll call you and give you all the details. I'll give you breaking news, Kev.
I'd love that. I'd love that. Thank you very much, Andrea, for filing that lawsuit, for standing up, for not complying, everything like that. I have a big message to everybody again, just like last week. Do not comply as we start seeing the rise of some of this COVID crap come up again. Do not comply. And when your rights are violated, know that you still have those rights and they can be fought for and defended through the court of law. And Andrea showed that perfectly. Thank you.
Sure.
I also wanted to, because I know we were talking a little bit earlier about, because that's the headline of this video, Nancy Pelosi, she's 83 and she's running for Congress again. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are, tell me you're a power mad psychopath without telling me. Right? But here's where I'm going to give you what fur has. Going to give you what fur now.
Okay.
Here's the whole thing. We don't need, it's not that we need term limits. We need this whole thing to be gone. We need the whole federal government to be gone. Because
okay, now you're starting to sound like an anarchist, Andrea.
I'm 100%. I'm 100% an anarchist.
Oh,
100%.
man. I
And I'll
disagree
tell you
with you on
why.
that. I think that there's a need for a federal government. I just think that we have a lot of scumbags that are running it right now. I believe we need leadership as a
Let
country.
me ask you a question, Kev.
Okay.
What has the federal government done over the last 100 years to improve Americans' life? Americans are now less free, taxed to death. They've sent their sons to die in foreign wars that we've had no business being in. We've been lied to. We've been manipulated. We've had our rights trampled. Can I ask you a question? Well, you wouldn't know this yet. Where does it make any sense that when you buy a house, if you pay off your home, but you don't pay your property taxes, the government will come in and take your home?
Hey, I agree with you on that front. But the thing is, so you asked the question earlier. You said, what has the government done for the American people in the last 100 years? And I'll agree. To an extent that the American government has done a lot of bad things to the American people. I consistently say on the show, excuse me, I consistently say that I believe the American government lies to us more than it tells the truth. But I do believe that we need a governing body there, especially in terms of dealing with foreign entities. I firmly believe that. Not to mention the fact that I think that the failures of the American government are when we go against, and when I say we, I mean kind of like the royal we of like everybody. And we go against the documents that are supposed to be guiding this country. Because I firmly believe that the Constitution is the greatest political document ever written. And I believe the Declaration of Independence is up there as well. And when we do not live up to the things that are in our Constitution, to what our revolutionaries wrote with the purpose of the Declaration of Independence, we're not living up to those. Those are the instances in which rights have been trampled on, freedoms are taken away. And so,
who has done that? The federal government.
But
Here,
see, but it's I get where you're coming from. But there needs to be a governing body, and the Constitution is supposed to be the guide for that governing body. And so we need a federal government. The problem is that our federal government isn't doing its job. It's not doing what it's supposed to as set forth by our Constitution.
I'm going to tell you what the answer is, Cass. This is what the answer, the short-term answer is to put the power in the states. The federal government has done nothing but consistently destroy and bankrupt this country. Consistently. Look at what they've even done with these quote-unquote social programs. They convinced Americans to pay into Social Security, and then they pillaged that fund. And then Joe Biden taxed that fund on top of it. And they're trying to convince Americans that it's a government, that it's a gift to you. It's not a gift to you. You paid into it your whole life. They took the money out of it, shipped it to foreign countries, and bankrupted it. And now they want you to believe that they're doing you a favor. Look at what they did to people who are on welfare. They have habitually increased the cycle of poverty continuously.
Here's the thing is I've never been one to defend the government or the federal government. I think it's hilarious that you've somehow gotten me to start defending the federal government in some way. But how in your hypothetical, in your world, and because you're coming up with a lot of examples of bad things the federal government has done that I agree are bad things, but I still believe that, and while we need to heavily dilute their power, the federal government's power, we need to get rid of a lot of our three-letter agencies like the Department of Education, CIA, FBI, and if we have investigative bodies, make them a lot less powerful than they are. But I'm digressing. What I still believe is that we need some level of a top form of government, that what its purpose is to be an organizational structure for all of the rest of our governmental bureaucracies, like our states and localities, as well as our federal government's having a significant purpose or role to play in interacting with foreign nations. Because we need a central figure to interact with foreign nations. Otherwise, we're going to have Illinois doing deals with Pakistan while Texas is doing deals with Iraq. Who knows how it could work out? But it would just be so having a federal government, having that central, the organization makes sense.
I'm going to disagree with you, Kev.
Okay.
And this is why. Because when our federal government goes over to other nations, what have they done? They've destroyed countries. They have destroyed countries, lied to the American people, sent American sons to die. We have done, our federal government has done more damage.
No, because I'm not disagreeing with you there, but you're going into, that's such a, well, I don't want to say it's a small portion, but that's a fraction of what the interactions we have with foreign nations are. What about trade? We do have to trade with other nations for things. Taiwan currently produces about 90% of our microchips. That's kind of something that we have to take care of. China, obviously, while they're not necessarily a friend of ours, we import a significant amount from there. And yeah, I want to work on domestic production, but there's some things that we just don't produce domestically, or at least don't produce enough of domestically, to which we need to import it from other places. And so there's business, there's trade. Interaction with foreign nations is not just war. It has been, and it could be, especially if we don't have a federal government to organize a military in the event that somebody wants to attack the United States.
Well, do you think, first and foremost, are you telling me that there's nobody smart enough in America to figure out how to make chips here? Everything that you just named.
I agree that we need to work on domestic. I agree that we need to work on domestic production. I agree that we need to work on domestic production, but that's not the way it currently is. And so we need a federal government to interact with other nations and work with trade, and also regulate businesses and also regulate other governments. Right, in terms of how they're interacting with it. We have China right now buying up a crap ton of the farmland in the United States. Why is no one doing anything about that? Like, we should have a president that does something about that.
Who made that possible? The federal government.
Yeah, but who could stop it? Who could also stop it?
You know who should stop it? The governors in those states. That's who should stop it. See, Kev, you don't. I'm
not an anarchist, and you're not either, because you still believe government needs to exist.
No, I do not.
So you don't want any. So you don't want state governments either. You don't want governors. You don't want state or local, because an anarchist doesn't believe in any government.
This is what I believe. I believe the solution is stopping the infection, which is the federal government, going to the state's government, who proved actually who they were during COVID and what their policies could be. And what I want is state governments to be small and afraid until people realize that we don't need any of them. We do not need any of them. We don't.
Well, Andrea, I do have to take a break here. We're coming to the end of this segment, but let's keep you on in the next segment, or at least through the break, and we can keep talking on Facebook and stuff, because this has become quite an interesting conversation that I was not expecting today. So thank you for tuning in. We will be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, we'll be back. Andrea.
Yep. Giving you what for?
Yeah. Oh my God. Here's the thing is, we should never need government. You're right on that one, at least in terms of a lot of things. But I do believe that there's a bare minimum that is a necessity of the federal government.
Kev,
it's an organizational structure.
At this point, there is no point to the federal government. There's no point to the Federal Reserve. There is no need for any of them. They just look at the buffoonery. The buffoonery when they hold these reality TV hearings, right, on these committees. If these committees aren't doing nothing, they're not going to impeach Joe Biden. It's reality TV. You have a bunch of buffoons. That's what they are. They're buffoons who are intentionally and who have been intentionally destroying this country. And I'm just going to tell you this. A lot of people say, well, if you don't have government, you're going to have, people being murdered. You're having people being murdered right now. From a lot of them from the federal government. Morality doesn't change just because there's a government. Our government is the most immoral people ever to exist.
And I'm not disagreeing with a lot of that, but I believe that at a fundamental level, there is a bare necessity of a federal government to organize the states, have a base set of rules, and then protect our nation as a whole.
But they're not protecting our nation. Our nation is being invaded through the southern border.
But Andrea, I'm not. See, you are arguing. We are arguing two different things right now. Right now, what I am arguing is that there is a necessity of a federal government. What you started your argument as was that we should not have a federal government. I am arguing that we should have a federal government, but they are not doing the right things. You are also arguing that they are not doing the right things, but so you're arguing something that's not worth arguing because we agree on that. What we disagree on, at least based on what you said earlier, is the necessity of a federal government. I do believe that there is a bare necessity of a federal government. You said at the beginning of this that you did not think we should have a federal government.
I do not. No, I do not.
Okay.
As a matter of fact,
so my belief is that we should have a federal government for bare necessities like some protection. I got to get back here in like 5 seconds. We're going to finish out this debate in the next segment because it's a short one. And just give me.
Well, if you have other calls, Kev, take your other.
You're the only call I got right now, but I have some other stories I want to get to. This is a short segment. Let's do this one right here because I think this will be an interesting.
It's good radio.
And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington, Normal, and beyond. This is a short segment, and if you guys were listening in the last segment, I have a caller on the line, Andrea. Her and I go back and forth a lot because we agree on a lot, but we also disagree on some things. And throughout the break, her and I have been duking out this debate that started off with her saying that we should not have a federal government. And I realized, or at least I believe I realized, that the heart of our debate and the issue we were having was that it started off with her saying that we should not have a federal government. I believe that there is a need for a federal government, but then we started arguing about different things like bad things that the government has done. And I agree the government's done a lot of bad things. And I don't think our federal government right now is living up to the promises that it holds, or it's, at least its duties that are promised within our Constitution and our founding documents. But that's really not the debate we're having. And so that's why I'm honing in on Andrea. You're still there. I know you are. So you do not believe we should have a federal government, period, right?
Nope.
Why?
I do not.
Why?
I do not, because the federal government basically has proven that it serves no purpose to this country other than to tax people and take away their rights. And most recently, to promote a level of degeneracy that does not represent the American people in this country. The federal government has just proven itself to be a relic that needs to be left in the past.
Okay, but what about having a military? Do you think we should have a central defense system?
Well, don't you think? I think
no. Yes or no? I want you to give me yes or no.
A central defense? No, I think every state should have their own military.
What then? How do we communicate? How do we have an organized militia then? If we had a foreign invader, what are we going to do?
Every state would protect their own. Don't you think that that's more efficient?
No.
than a bunch of psychopaths in D.C.?
No, you want to know why?
Okay.
You want to know why I don't think that's. I'm not talking about the psychopaths in D.C. I'm talking about a military. I'm talking about
I'm talking about a military too.
and you want to know why I think it's not? Have you ever seen the movie The Rise of the Planet of the Apes?
No.
You've never seen Rise of the Planet of the Apes? Amazing movie. Okay, so there's a scene in that in which it's an orangutan talking to another ape, and he pulls out a stick, like a stick from a tree, and he goes, "When you're one," and if anybody's watching me on YouTube, you can see it. When you're one, you break. You're like that. You snap, and he snaps the stick. But then he gets a fistful of sticks, and they're all together. And you can't break them. The point being, and how this relates to what we're talking about, is if we have a bunch of states doing their own thing, just protecting themselves, you're gonna break. It's not gonna happen. Illinois versus China, we're screwed. We are screwed. However, America versus China, we will destroy them. I firmly believe it.
Well, you're assuming that states would not work together in the event that there's an invasion. They 100% would.
But who would lead that? Who would lead that? Who would lead that? How would they work together?
There would be military leaders in every state, just like there's military leaders in the federal government.
So you're saying that we'd then have military leaders from every state come together and lead their armies together?
Yeah.
So that'd be a federal government, or at least a federal. It would be a pseudo federal government for the military.
Well, let me put it to you like this: I don't think the U.S. would have to worry about being invaded if we weren't so quick to go to other countries and impose our will on everybody else.
That's not what we're talking about right here. We're talking about the need for a federal government. You believe there is not one.
No.
I showed you why I think there is.
There is not a need for a federal government. There's not. It can all be handled on the state level.
I firmly disagree. And again, I'm not a defender of the federal government by any means. I would 100% agree that they've done some egregious things and are not living up to the promises that we should have. However, we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one, Andrea, because I got to take a break and I got some other stories to get to. But I always appreciate calling in, and I appreciate anybody who calls in, and we can have a good disagreement and a lively discussion. And I appreciate you.
I 100% respect your opinion, and I love that we agree to disagree. I respect it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrea. God bless you, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye, Kev.
Of course. Well, everybody, thank you, Andrea, for calling in. And if you have a debate you'd like to have with me, I guess that's what we're doing here now. I mean, I got some other stories to cover, and I'll get to those. But if you have something interesting that you want to have a debate over, that was a out-of-nowhere conversation regarding the need for a federal government. And I thought we had a very lively discussion, great points on both sides. Thank you, Andrea, for calling in. You could be, we could debate, you and I, you listener right now, 309-451-9299. Let's hear it. Everybody, we'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Blue meets normal and beyond. Getting over my cold, but I see my good friend Ty Smith over there. Yeah, these were some points I was trying to bring up. Ty, other Ty that's in Facebook. But I appreciate having the discussion, Andrea. I think it was an interesting one, and it's a position that I haven't heard many take. The no federal government position. I haven't really heard that one very much. So I appreciate it. I think it's interesting. I love my good buddy Ty Smith. I see him there in the comments. Yeah, this is kind of one thing I was saying, Raj, but I even tried to bring up the point. I mean, like, because to an extent, you're kind of saying if they're all going to work together and they're all going to send leaders together, at least on the military level, you're creating a central government that acts as kind of a federal body to organize the military. Uh, Everybody go subscribe to Modern Renaissance Man if you are not. Ty Smith, my good buddy, I produce his show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm sorry I'm yawning. It's been a long weekend. Like I said, I'm getting over being sick a little bit, so hasn't been easy, but I'm still here, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be talking to you guys. I only talked about it for like 2 minutes at the end of the last show, but I've been really sad about Jimmy Buffett dying too. I haven't listened to it yet, but I saw he came out with a new song posthumously. And I gotta listen to that. Maybe I'll do a reaction video for the YouTube of the new Jimmy Buffett song. I got another Kamala interview for this next segment. She's on Face the Nation this morning, and she's silly. She's just a silly woman, you know. Kamala Harris, just a silly, silly lady. Very silly lady. Everybody, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and comment. I'd appreciate it. Also, if you'd be so kind and you have the ability to, I always like to just give the option. I would be very appreciative if you guys would consider possibly supporting the show through Cash App or Venmo. Through YouTube, you could do a super chat, but I will let you know only about like a little over half of what you pay into the super chat goes to me. The rest goes to ScrewTube. So if you want to directly support the show, scrolling at the bottom down there, I have mine. You'll see them right about there. There's the Venmo. There's the Cash App right there. If you want, if you have the means to and would like to support the show, what that would go to is new equipment. Being able to, I mean, obviously, then I'd be able to put more time into time, effort, energy, money into different content as well. Things I want to invest in, getting new mics so that I can, like, not these kind of mics, but mics that I could use to go on the road and do like on the street videos, stuff like that. If you'd be interested in supporting the show through that and being able to help me get that kind of equipment, please consider donating and supporting the show through Venmo, Cash App, or through Super Chat. But again, I don't see that money really or as much of it. So I'd appreciate it if you guys would consider. Thank you so much. At some point, I'll probably try to come out with merch when I can invest more in that. I can come out with merch like that Speechless with Kev Phares t-shirt kind of thing, and send that to people that might be interested. But I got to come back here live on the radio now. Hey, and welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. God bless you guys. God bless America. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, where we're covering a lot of different news here. It's had an amazing debate discussion with one of my viewers on YouTube, Andrea, where we talked about the need for a federal government and what its actual purpose is. Does it even have a purpose? Well, if you want to debate or have any kind of conversations like that with me, I am open. I am open for debate, always. So 309-451-9299, text or call in. If you'd like to be involved in the show in that way. If you disagree with me on anything, you're the first person I want to hear from. I love hearing from people that disagree with me. I love having those spirited discussions. And I'm always open to having my mind change. Maybe you could change my mind. 309-451-9299. Well, somebody who was trying to change minds this morning did an awful job. And that's our Vice President, Kamala Harris. She was on Face the Nation this morning. Vice President Kamala Harris was on Face the Nation this morning, and the Veep was pressed on the topic of abortion. Topic of abortion is one I am always very interested to cover because while I am a Catholic, it oftentimes gets framed as if it's just a religious issue. And I'll tell you, it's not just a religious issue. It's a biological and legal issue. And there's the moral side of it as well. But there is a sector of society that pushes subjective morality, and that we're not getting into that. But I want to play parts of this interview. We're going to cut it up a little bit. But let's listen here. Kamala Harris on Face the Nation gets pushed hard to put definitive answers to her abortion stance. And I think it's very, very interesting. Take a look, take a listen.
So what
It's muted right now. Let me make sure. I don't know. Maybe it's just on my end, but I cannot hear it. Here we go. I got it. Let's go.
So what is it that you believe? I mean, what week of pregnancy should abortion access be cut off?
We need to restore the protections of Roe versus Wade.
Which
We're
was-
not trying to do something new.
Well, that was
There's-
nebulous because it was about viability, which could be anywhere
That's
between 20 to 24 weeks. And
But
so
no.
That
Let
was in
me be very
the
clear.
Women's Health Protection Act that the
Let me
White House also
let me be very
endorsed.
clear.
Okay, now she says, let me be very clear. Kamala, I'm waiting for you to be very clear. When do you think abortion should be cut off? When do you think the limit is? Let's hear it.
From day one, the president has been clear. I have been clear. We need to put back the protections that are in Roe v. Wade into law since the Supreme Court took it.
That's not clear, Kamala. That is not clear. You literally just had the host that says, please give me a week, give me a date, give me a part of pregnancy, give me that. And she just keeps saying Roe v. Wade. And again, Roe v. Wade's protections, which are, again, no longer in place because the court should not be legislating something like that. The Roe v. Wade said viability, which is nebulous, like the CBS host said.
Congress has the power and ability to pass legislation to put those protections back in law, and Joe Biden will sign that bill. So that is what we want.
But does it need to be specific in terms of defining and where that guarantee goes up to and where it does not, at which week of pregnancy?
We need to put back in place the protections of Roe versus Wade.
That's what she keeps saying. That's all she can say. She is literally just reading talking points. I'm pretty sure, and look, this is not just because she's a Democrat. Now, being a Democrat is part of it, but it's not just because of that. I firmly believe that in relevance of intelligence to level of power, Kamala Harris in the entire United States history is of the lowest intelligence in terms of how much power she has. No one of her low intelligence has ever received as much power as she has. I firmly believe that. Keep listening to what else she has to say in this interview.
You
We
know
are
why
not-
I'm asking you
but
this
I-
question,
but
though, because
we're not trying to do anything that did not exist before June of last year.
Well,
Saying
it wasn't
no,
crafted into law. And that's why I'm asking you for the
But
specifics there, because Republicans say the lack of a precise date in cutting it off. You know this. They say that allows Democrats to perform abortions up until, birth.
which is
Which is
ridiculous.
statistically not
Oh, it's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
accurate.
And it's ridiculous,
I
and it's a
understand that.
mischaracterization
So,
of the point. No, the point
but
is,
do
the
you
point
need
is
to be
we
more
have to-
precise?
I am being precise.
No, you're
We
not.
need to put into law the protections of Roe versus Wade.
Look, here's what this tells me. Because she says things like, we're not trying to do anything that wasn't already done before Roe v. Wade was overturned. Okay, that means that, because look, statistically, here's the truth, everybody. Here is the truth. Statistically, late-term abortions are the lowest performed. The majority of abortions do take place in the first 2 trimesters. That's true. But for people that are pro-life, like myself, which Democrats fail to realize, is that we see the first 2 trimesters as human life. We also see that every life lost, even if whether it's 1, 100, 1,000, or 100,000, each and every one of those has value in the 3rd trimester, just as much as they had in the first. That's what Democrats fail to see. And so for her to call it ridiculous when we say that they want late-term abortions, many of them do. And so when Kamala cannot say, when she is asked to give a precise time, a part of fetal development, a week in a pregnancy, anything, and she says the protections of Roe v. Wade, we know what you really mean, Kamala. There's two things that you really mean. First off, I think she really doesn't know. I think she just kind of she follows the playbook to a T, to the point where it's relatively predictable. And that's how I can predict, too, that what she means when she says codify Roe v. Wade, this is what all of them mean when they say codify Roe v. Wade into law. What they mean is abortion on demand with zero restrictions, and they just say it in a way, they say codify Roe. You want to know why they say that? Because abortion on demand, I want to be able to terminate a pregnancy at any time. Or the Ralph Northam, remember former governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, on a radio show a few years back, like 2018, 2019, was caught on a hot mic saying that he believed that women should be allowed to give birth to a baby, swaddle that baby, and then decide whether or not they want that child, to which they could perform a post-birth abortion. Real thing. Former governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, actually said. Real thing. And yet, Kamala Harris wants to say that it's ridiculous for Republicans to believe that Democrats want late-term abortions up until end of pregnancy. Come on. Come on. We're not that stupid, Kamala. So what are they really doing? They say codify Roe, restore Roe, anything like that, as a puff way of saying no restrictions. And heck, look at Illinois. Here's what Democrats really want. Because Democrats at the national level praise people like J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, for his pro-abortion stances. Well, what do we have in Illinois? Because that's the playbook that they'd like to use for the rest of the nation, right? What do we have in Illinois? We have abortion on demand, I believe, up until end of pregnancy. I believe it's up until the baby is born, you can get an abortion in Illinois. We have, in some cases, taxpayer-funded abortions. We also have instances in which people under the age of 18 can get an abortion and have access to abortion without having their parents notified. Yeah. So when they say restore Roe, what do they mean? What do they mean? They mean make America Illinois in terms of abortion. And so I touched on this at the beginning of this segment because Kamala was just hilarious. But what is the actual pro-life argument? Real quick. I've talked about it on this show before, but I just think it's good to remind everybody. The pro-life argument. Look, biologically, the majority of biologists, and according to a UChicago study, 96% of biologists agree that life begins at conception. Currently, according to the Unborn Victims Act, women who are, if a pregnant woman is murdered, the murderer can be charged with a double homicide. So our legal system and biology already recognize an unborn child as a human life. Our legal system defines murder as the forceful taking of a human life from one person to another, a homicide. So if we recognize that an unborn child is a human life in law and in biology, and we also know the definition of homicide and murder, how is an abortion, the procedure of an abortion, not equivalent to a homicide? Why is it not? Because we have a lot of people that try to put feelings over their facts. The feeling, well, I believe in bodily autonomy, except for when it's for the unborn child, right? Yeah, we got a lot of crazies out there, but I got to take a break here on the radio. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Excuse me. Like I said earlier, getting over this cold. But I just thought that was an interesting interview that came out this morning on Face the Nation. And while that reporter was obviously more liberal, I did like how she was really trying to get Kamala to say, what do you actually believe? What do you actually believe? Get you to actually say it. This is funny. Wouldn't a well-trained parrot do the same thing Kamala does? That's funny. I like it. This is a good one too, Oklahoma Chicken Cam. That is infanticide, what Governor Ralph Northam said. Former Governor Ralph Northam. Great question, Raj. Let me know if you ever find an answer. ATF should be a store, not a federal agency. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, man. I'd love that. That'd be a great store. I'd go every day. I'd own one. All right, we're going to end this show on a good note, or kind of motivational note, similar to some messages I was saying last week. Don't forget, everybody, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, comment. Obviously, many of you do comment, and I appreciate that. And as always, if you have the means and would like to do so, I'd always appreciate if you guys would hit up my Venmo, my Cash App, even if it's just a few bucks, so I can just keep on saving to upgrade my equipment, get better cameras, better microphones, get some portable equipment so that I can go on the road and still create great content, even if I was on a vacation or out of state or anything like that. Or if I was like out on my quad, I could do on the road content like that. I'd really appreciate it if you guys would consider, even if it's, like I said, just a few bucks. God bless you guys. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. If I got a PayPal, you'd give me ATF money. I'll look into getting PayPal. I really like Cash App, though. Cash App is very easy for my bank. We'll be back soon here. One more segment, motivational segment. And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington, Normal, and beyond. God bless you guys. We are ending out the show here. Only got a few more minutes left. But I always want to take a good opportunity to talk to you guys. So if you've never tuned in before and you might have just been listening to me today, and no matter how much you caught of the show, I'd appreciate it. If you missed any of it and you want to listen to more, you can go on on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, Speechless with Kev Phares, last name Phares. And you can find me on all those. Don't forget, if you do find any of those, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, let me know what you're thinking, subscribe, anything like that. Thank you guys so much. I want to start off the ending of this by once again reminding everybody that tomorrow is 9/11. And so I think it's a perfect time to make sure that we all say a prayer for those that lost their lives, gave their lives as first responders, those that were innocent, that were attacked mercilessly. Let's all say a prayer at some point in the next day for them. Almost 3,000 people that died and the countless others that have consistently had health problems afterwards due to those attacks. So there's that. But I also want to, I talked about this a little bit last week, and I think it's important to end shows similarly to this. And I think it was a good way. It's a good way for me to end my show most weeks. It's just a motivational point, because it's coming into my life recently. And I talked about this last week about how I've gone through a little bit of weight loss recently. And yeah, I've stumbled, I've fallen. I just ate a donut today. I'm not the best, but I've gone into some weight loss. I've started regularly working out. And it's really pushed this idea in my head, along with a few other things in my life, that anything that's going on in your life, anything, whatever's causing you hardship, whatever makes you look in the mirror and not like what you see, you could change that. 100%. You could change it. It starts today, everybody. It starts today. At the end of this show, 3 minutes left. Whatever you're going through, whatever's not easy, whether it's a phone call to a family member you've been putting off, whether it's going outside and going for a walk to just get your blood moving, whether you're going through some really deep anxiety. A lot of people in my generation go through deep anxiety. I do too. Clenching your fists and letting go, and then realizing, taking in a deep breath and saying, wow, I'm still alive. Reminding yourself that you are still alive. A sedentary lifestyle is not a lifestyle. What do I mean by that? What do I mean is, if you're not moving, and not just physically moving, yes, getting outside, going, doing things, moving my arms, everything like that. Yeah. If you're not moving, you're not alive. But also, if you're not moving, if you're not going somewhere, if you don't have a goal or a reason, if you're not finding that reason that you have to live, the reason you're still on this planet, if you're not finding that, then what are you doing? Because there's a reason you're still here. I think about in Philippians, in the Bible. In Philippians, there's a moment. Paul is in prison for declaring Jesus as his Lord and Savior. And Paul says at one point, he says, he's contemplating death, and part of him is hoping for it, because he knows that once he dies, he's going to be able to go meet God, and he's going to be able to sit with God, and he's excited for that in heaven. But what he says is, he goes, well, if I'm still here, my execution date isn't set. I haven't been executed yet. If I'm still alive, there's a reason I'm still here. You still have a reason. For whatever reason, you are still here. You're still breathing. You're still alive. Now remind yourself of it. And find that reason. You might have it. You might not need that. But there's somebody out there that needs that. There's been times in my life where I've needed that message. So everybody, reminder. Find your purpose. You have one. And remind yourself that you're alive. God bless you guys. I got to get out of here. Thank you so much for listening this week on Speechless. Catch me next Sunday from 3 to 5. I'm your host, Kev Phares, and we'll be back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Okay, everybody. I hope you guys like that. I'll come up with something different every week a little bit, but I think that some level of motivation, use a little bit of scripture in there, or at least biblical reference. I think it's important. I think there's a lot of times people can get just so bogged up and not realize, like, hey, I got something to do. I have something. You might not know what it is. We're always searching for that purpose. What is life's purpose? Existential crises are a common thread between most college students. I know not everybody out there watching is a college student, but I'm just trying to say I know what it's like. And so I'll come up with, but I think that's a great way to end the show. I know Ty always has his hoping and praying every last one of you has a food, clothing, shelter. Well, you guys know what he says. And so I think coming up with something like that, that's just a good reminder for everybody. And it's going to be something different every week, like I said, but that's what I plan to do. And I hope that helps somebody out there, because I know somebody's always going through a hard time and they need a little pick me up. So God bless you guys. God bless America. We'll be back next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been Speechless, the radio show this time. Speechless, the radio show.